The soup bowl struck the sink and burst like a small storm, splashing broth onto Rosa's wrists. "Wipe that," Vanessa said, already turning her back. "And don't drip on the marble, it stains. You know that, or do you?" "Sorry," Rosa murmured, reaching for the towel even as the heat seared Dot. She had learned long ago that apologies were cheaper than arguments. The Whitmore kitchen was a cathedral of chrome and glass, bright enough to turn anyone into a reflection. Rosa's reflection looked older than 52, shoulders bent, hair salted with gray, eyes careful. "Grandma keeps you because she's sentimental," Vanessa added, reappearing long enough to sniff the air. "But after we move her to Garden Oaks, things will be different, you understand?" Rosa swallowed. "I understand you want what's best for Mrs. Whitmore. That's one way to spell it." Vanessa flicked her nail against the counter, the sharp clink a little blade. "Best for us." From the doorway, a teenage voice floated in, trailing laughter. "Is the maid lecturing again?" Ethan waltzed in with headphones crooked around his neck. "Just the maid," he sang, tapping the words on his phone, turning it into a joke for a feed that ate people for breakfast. Rosa looked past them, through the window, to the rose bushes she trimmed every Tuesday. The bushes didn't talk back. They just bled a little when she cut them right. "Rosa?" The call came from upstairs, gentle as the moth-gray light. "Tea, if you please." Rosa dried her hands. "Yes, ma'am." Mrs. Eleanor Whitmore's bedroom held a different weather. The air smelled of paper and lavender. Sunlight walked across the oak floor like a polite guest. Eleanor sat propped up by pillows, a knitted shawl around her shoulders. A book splayed face down like a resting bird. "You're limping," she said. "Kitchen floor is a bit slippery today." Eleanor's eyes slid toward Rosa's sleeve where dampness clung. "I told them to be kind. But telling and changing are cousins who haven't spoken in years. Sit, dear. Let's pretend time is a coin we can spend slowly." Rosa poured tea, chamomile. "My favorite." Eleanor smiled. "Do you know why they despise you, Rosa?" Rosa shook her head. "Because you remind them that goodness is not a credential." Eleanor chuckled softly, and then coughed, winced, recovered. "And because you see this house. Not the house they brag about, the house that breathes." Rosa said nothing. She had arrived a decade ago with a frayed suitcase and a promise to herself. Keep your head down, keep your heart clean. Eleanor had been newly widowed, the children orbiting like restless moons, tugged by their own tides. Rosa cooked, scrubbed, polished, mended. She mopped up water and anger both. And in that long, repetitive labor, an odd friendship grew. Eleanor reached for the leather notebook on her knitstand, the one with its band stretched tired across the cover. She placed it atop Rosa's palm for a second, and then took it back. A tease of weight. "I'm writing letters," she said. "For when I'm quieter." "You're already quiet," Rosa said, trying to make it light. "Quieter, Eleanor." Repeated, eyes kind. Downstairs, doors thudded. Laughter, the bright hard kind, ricocheted off tile. Rosa adjusted the curtains and tucked Eleanor's blanket under her feet. Before leaving, Eleanor caught her wrist. "Rosa, do you remember the winter the pipes burst?" "How could I forget? The kitchen turned into a lake. The children refused to come. Money, meetings, conferences about money. You made porridge on a camping stove, and we wore hats by the radiator and read poems. Do you know, that was the last time I felt home." Rosa smiled. "You used a colander as a lampshade." Ridiculous, wasn't it? Eleanor squeezed her hand. Ridiculous and perfect. Vanessa called a family meeting the next Sunday. She filled the dining room with the scent of expensive perfume and ambition. Gregory, the eldest, arrived in an ironed frown. His wife Lynn spoke only in questions that sounded like accusations. Ethan scrolled. Chloe filmed micro-videos of the silverware. Nobody said Eleanor's name except Rosa. Mother, Gregory corrected, thumbnail scraping the stem of a crystal glass. Mother, we need to talk about Mother. Eleanor was present, of course thin and stubborn and displeased at being discussed like an investment. She sat at the head of the table. Rosa stayed in the doorway as usual, part of the architecture. Garden Oaks has a waiting list, Vanessa announced, but I can pull strings. I looked at the deluxe suite. It faces the north. I'm not moving, Eleanor said. Vanessa blinked. You'll love it. 50 acres of curated companionship. What is that? A farm for people? Mother, your safety, Gregory sighed. Stairs. Falls, you know. I have rails, Eleanor said, patting the cane propped near her chair. I have Rosa. Vanessa made the sound people make when they step in something unexpected. Rosa is not a nurse. She is not, Eleanor agreed. She is Rosa. Lynn leaned back. This is going nowhere. It's going to probate court if we don't act, Gregory muttered. And Rosa watched the word probate fly like a moth around the chandelier. After dinner, Vanessa cornered Rosa in the pantry. You're not irreplaceable, she said, almost cheerfully. Actually, you're extremely replaceable. I never thought otherwise, Rosa said. You will not block what's best for this family. I do what Mrs. Whitmore asks. My mother is confused. Her tea is warm, and she likes the curtains open at 3. Vanessa's smile cooled. I wonder what the agency would say if they heard about the broken vase last week. It fell, Rosa said. Did it? Or did you sell it? You people have cousins. Vanessa, said a voice at the doorway. Eleanor, cane in hand, steady as a lighthouse. Enough. Vanessa's mouth worked and then closed. Eleanor looked at Rosa. Would you wheel me out to the garden? The roses are performing. In the garden, Eleanor lowered herself onto the wrought iron bench. Rosa, promise me something, if I can. Promise you will stay until I am done. Rosa took a slow breath. I promise. The ring accusation arrived 2 weeks later. Lynn discovered her diamond ring missing from the mosaic dish by the sink. Vanessa swept the kitchen with a glare. Gregory called the security company. Footage was inconclusive. Ethan filmed. Roses bent back and captioned it, sus. A policeman stood in the doorway, apologetic, while Vanessa's voice sharpened to a needle. We can't be naive anymore, officer. Search me, Rosa said. She held out her hands like a small, tired criminal. The policeman looked uncomfortable. Vanessa looked delighted. They found the ring in Rosa's apron pocket. Rosa stared at it, stunned, the world tilting. She hadn't worn that apron since yesterday. Her stomach felt like the moment a lift drops. That's it, Vanessa said, triumphant. Thief. Eleanor's cane cracked the tile. Stop. Everyone turned. Eleanor's eyes were steel. Did she steal the cheap vase too? The one you hated, Vanessa, because it reminded you of the summer your father canceled Lake Como. Vanessa colored. Mother, I placed the ring, Eleanor said. While Rosa was making my toast. Mum, what? Gregory choked. to see whether I had raised children who would accuse a good woman 10 seconds faster than they would. Ask her a question. Eleanor's gaze traveled the room like a searchlight. I have my answer. Silence. The policeman cleared his throat. Ma'am, if you don't wish to file a report, we do not, Eleanor said. And you, officer, are welcome to a cookie if you'd like one. They're safe, no jewels inside. Rosa set her hands on the counter to steady herself. Later, when the house was finally quiet, Eleanor reached for her notebook again. I'm sorry, she whispered. Sometimes a mirror is the only way to show a face. Will you forgive a foolish old experiment? Rosa nodded, but the nod was heavy. Something inside her had bent and would not easily unbend. Winter returned, and with it breath that fogged the windows and joints, that woke with complaint. Rosa rubbed ointment into Eleanor's fingers each morning and warmed the towels and read small paragraphs of poetry out loud. On good days, Eleanor laughed. On bad days, she stared at the ceiling and talked to her late husband as if he were only upstairs. Late for dinner. One such afternoon, a man with a careful suit and eyes the color of middle distance came by. He introduced himself as Mr. Hawley, the family attorney. He and Eleanor spoke in the library. They spoke for a long time. When Rosa brought tea, the conversation stopped. When she stepped out, paper rustled, pens murmured. That night, Eleanor slept without nightmares. Sometimes, she said the next morning, a person must choose who they are beholden to. Blood is not always a hand to hold. Sometimes it is a hand that grabs. Rosa smoothed the blanket. Would you like toast? Would you like a future where you can sit? Eleanor asked, and then shook her head at her own riddle. Yes, toast. Eleanor's last day came without thunder. She napped in her armchair by the window as the light drew long fingers toward the floor. Rosa was patching the elbow of Eleanor's cardigan with small, careful stitches. She looked up when the breathing changed. She put down the needle. She knelt. Mrs. Whitmore? She whispered, though she already knew. When the paramedics left, the house felt like a theater after curtain. The room seemed embarrassed by their own quiet. Rosa washed the teacup, rinsed the saucer, and set both on the counter to dry. The family arrived in raincoats of grief and calculation. Vanessa cried beautifully, mascara mapping artful rivers. Gregory made phone calls about everything and nothing. Lynn arranged Lily. Ethan, for once, kept his phone in his pocket. At the funeral, people said words that tried to be large enough. The pastor spoke of mercy. Neighbors spoke of cocktail parties. Mr. Hawley stood like punctuation at the edge of every conversation. A week later, invitations arrived by courier for a reading of the will. All parties of interest, the envelope said. One reached Rosa's hands, carried by Ethan, who stared at the floor as he gave it to her. You're invited, he mumbled. Am I? She said. Yeah. He shoved his hands into his pockets. I'm sorry about the everything. Your grandmother loved you, Rosa said. He nodded, jaw tight, and escaped. The library smelled of lemon oil and old decisions. Eleanor's portrait presided from above the mantel, her smile a secret from another afternoon. Books lined the walls like quiet jurors. Mr. Hawley took his place behind the desk, opened a folder that seemed to exhale, and looked around. Vanessa wore white, the kind of white that announces innocence. Gregory wore black, the kind of black that announces propriety. Lynn wore pearls. Chloe wore impatience. Ethan wore a solemnity that didn't quite fit. Rosa wore her best dress, a navy one that made her feel like she belonged in a room, regardless of who else did. "Thank you for coming," Mr. Hawley began. "Mrs. Eleanor Whitmore left a will dated 3 months ago, along with a letter of explanation. There is also a separate testamentary trust. Before we begin, I will ask that all present refrain from commentary." His eyes brushed Vanessa's. She offered a smile made of glass. "As customary, we begin with specific bequests," Mr. Hawley read. "To my daughter Vanessa, I leave the strand pearls that belong to my mother." Vanessa exhaled in relief, "on the condition that she wear them when she apologizes to Rosa." The room hiccuped. Vanessa flushed. Ethan glanced at Rosa, then down. "To my son Gregory," Mr. Hawley continued, "I leave my father's cufflinks, because he admired them more than he ever said. To my grandchildren, Ethan and Chloe, I leave my first edition of Frost to be shared, and a note inside that tells you where to read Mending Wall and feel the stones more than the words." Lynn shifted. "Is that all the Mrs. Whitmore's will is?" "Structured," Mr. Hawley said mildly. "Now the residuary estate." He lifted a second document. "The properties, investments, and the house at 14 Hawthorne Lane are bequeathed to." He paused, and in that pause silence drew itself taller. "To Ms. Rosa Alvarez." There are many ways people react when the ground changes its mind. Vanessa reached for the chair with a hand that missed and caught air. Gregory made a small barking sound he would later blame on dust. Lynn whispered, "Illegitimate," as if the word were a species of bird that had wandered into the room. Chloe said, "Wait, who?" Ethan merely stared at Rosa as if seeing her for the first time. Rosa didn't move. The words felt like warm water poured over stone, slowly, slowly. She watched them find their shape. "That is absurd," Vanessa said, standing. "Mother was manipulated." "There is a letter," Mr. Hawley said. He unfolded a page in Eleanor's tidy hand. His voice softened as he read, "My dears, if your mouths are open right now, close them. You will catch flies. You are wondering why I have left the house to Rosa. Because a house, to be a house, needs a heart. Rosa gave this one hers. She did not ask for ownership. She gave stewardship. When your father died, you were busy being important. Rosa was busy making sure I ate soup. When my hip went to war with the stairs, you suggested a facility. Rosa suggested we move the teapot downstairs. She has for 10 years. Proved that love is not a sentiment, but a series of small, faithful acts. Money, I have learned, makes people louder. Rosa is quiet. I have decided to reward quiet. Do not embarrass yourselves by contesting this. There is a no contest clause that forfeits your bequests if you try. In addition, I have created a trust, administered by Mr. Hawley, that will provide for your education, health, and basic needs should you ever discover the pleasure of humility. Vanessa, you are not cruel. You only mistake control for competence. Gregory, you are not unfeeling. You only mistake fear for prudence. As for you, Rosa, forgive me for putting you in the middle of a lesson that should have been learned long ago. Live in the house if you wish. Open the windows. Read poems in the kitchen. Plant more roses. And remember me not as the woman in the portrait, but as the one who laughed with a colander on her head. By the time Mr. Hawley finished, Vanessa's face was a geography of outrage. This is invalid, she snapped. She was old. This bis maid she coerced. She didn't coerce me, said another voice, and everyone looked up. On the bookshelf, A small screen flickered. Mr. Holly tapped a remote. Eleanor's recorded message filled the room. She sat at her desk, shawl around her shoulders, eyes steady. "If you are watching this," she said to her children with that familiar dry humor, "you've already tried to pull the will apart like taffy. Stop. I have been more lucid than a judge's gavel." For months, Mr. Holly insisted on tests. "I passed them with higher scores than Gregory's last cholesterol check. The decision is mine. I have loved you badly at times, and often with a credit card. I am trying, at the end, to love you with a boundary. Boundaries are also a kind of love." She looked at Rosa through the lens, and her voice warmed. "Dear Rosa, do not run away." The screen went dark. No one spoke for a long beat. Then Gregory cleared his throat. "How much?" he said, as if numbers could reverse a tide. "Enough," Mr. Holly said. Vanessa turned on Rosa. I didn't know," Rosa said softly. "Oh, you didn't know? You lived in this house for free like a tick on a Vanessa," Ethan said, surprising himself. "Stop," she blinked at him. "Excuse me? Grandma chose," he said. "We all know why." Vanessa's mouth opened, closed, opened. She fled the room. Gregory lasted longer. "This is surreal," he muttered, eyes hopping from document to portrait to Mr. Hale's face, as if looking for a loose brick. "There must be recourse." "There is." Mr. Holly tapped the page. "There is recourse to accept your mother's generosity and your mother's lesson." Lynn squeezed Gregory's arm. "Let's regroup." They left in a flurry, trailed by Chloe, who cast one last baffled glance at Rosa, as if she'd mistaken a lamppost for a comet and was trying to update her map of the sky. Only Ethan and Mr. Holly remained with Rosa in the quiet that followed. Rosa looked down at her hands. They were clean for once, but trembled. "I don't know what to do," she said. "Live," Mr. Holly said simply. Then softer, "Mrs. Whitmore asked me to deliver one more envelope to you in private." He handed her a small sealed letter. She slid it into her pocket, the paper cool against her skin like a steadying palm. Ethan hovered. "Rosa," he said, I was awful." "You were young," she said. "I was cruel." Rosa looked at him then, really looked, and saw that grief had finally found him. "You can be kind now." "I want to help," he blurted. "With the garden. With anything." "Come Saturday," she said. "We'll prune." He nodded, relief flushing his face like dawn. The first nights in the house as its owner felt impossible. Rosa moved through rooms like a careful trespasser. She made tea and sat in Eleanor's chair and opened the letter. "Dear Rosa," it began, "you will try to give this back. That is your one flaw. You return everything, even kindness, as if you have borrowed it. Please don't. Keep the house. Let it keep you. Use the trust to repair the roof in your heart. And set a table bigger than anger. Invite whom you wish. The fuse box is behind the pantry broom. I know you never could find it." Rosa laughed through a tear. She went to the pantry and opened the small door she had dusted 100 times without seeing. There it was, the fuse box, plain as a confession. She shut it gently, as if it were a secret. On Saturday, Ethan arrived in a sweatshirt and earnestness. They worked in the garden, the two of them, hands dark with soil. Ethan asked questions that weren't content for anything, only for understanding. "Why do you cut there?" "How do you know when to stop?" Rosa answered. "Because the plant tells you." Later, he stood at the sink washing his hands. and looked around as though he had been given permission to see for the first time. "It smells different," he said. "Less perfume. More cinnamon?" "I baked," Rosa said. He smiled. "Grandma would like that." "She would," Rosa said. Vanessa did not appear for 2 weeks. When she finally did, she came armed with an apology and a penitent necklace of pearls that glowed against her throat like surrender. She stood on the porch for a long minute before knocking. Rosa opened the door. "I made a promise," Vanessa said, lifting a trembling hand to touch the pearls. "I figure the sooner the better." Rosa stepped aside. "Come in." In the kitchen, Vanessa stared at the table as if it were a witness. "I was ugly," she said. "I made myself small by making you smaller." Rosa poured coffee. "Grief does that. So does fear." Vanessa's laugh broke. "I'm always afraid. That's the secret none of us say. Afraid of being ordinary. Afraid of being poor. Afraid of being alone." "Being afraid doesn't mean being cruel," Rosa said. Vanessa nodded. "I know." She swallowed. "Grandma, Mother loved you." "She loved you," Rosa said. Vanessa's face crumpled. Not a pretty cry now, but a human one. Rosa passed her a napkin. "I don't know who I am without this house," Vanessa whispered. "You are someone even if a house forgets your name," Rosa said. "But this house hasn't forgotten. It is kinder than people." "I don't expect you to forgive me," Vanessa said. "I don't expect you to know what to do with forgiveness if I handed it to you all at once," Rosa replied, surprising herself with the steadiness of the words. "Stay for lunch," Vanessa did. She peeled carrots badly and burned her tongue on soup, and told a story about Ethan as a toddler who used to wear a mixing bowl as a helmet. They laughed. It wasn't a miracle. It was a chair pulled out from a table. Mr. Hall helped Rosa set up the trust's practicalities. "There are more assets than you might imagine," he said as they walked the house with a contractor, pointing at roofs and windows that had deliberately been deferred. "Mrs. Whitmore sold the Lake Arrowhead property last year. She earmarked a portion for you personally. Another portion is designated for community purposes, specifically scholarships for domestic workers' children and donations to the soup kitchen you volunteer at." "How did she know about?" "She knew," Mr. Halley said, smiling. "She saw you leave with casseroles that didn't always return." Rosa blushed. "I'm not a saint." "Good," he said. "Saints are hard to talk to." News traveled the neighborhood like weather. Some people looked at Rosa with curiosity, others with naked annoyance, a few with something that might someday grow into respect. The Whitmore children adapted unevenly. Gregory accepted the cufflinks, and after 2 false starts, sent a letter that was almost a letter. Lynn did not speak but allowed Ethan to. Chloe filmed a short of the roses that went quietly viral because she did not add text, only wind and petals. Rosa kept working. She cleaned the banister with the same devotion she'd given it the first week she'd arrived. She took afternoon walks, touching each fence post with her hand, as if counting blessings without saying the name. She added a neighbor's extra chair to the porch because Eleanor had once said no conversation should require standing. One evening, she sat at the kitchen table and opened the leather notebook Eleanor had loved. Inside, folded like a fragile map, was a list labeled "Things I Learned Too Late." It said, "Wear the good dress. Tell the truth the first time. Eat the cake. Be suspicious of anyone who refuses to laugh at themselves. Put windows where the light wants to go. People are not investments. Investments are not people. If someone cooks for you, wash their dish. If someone washes your dish, ask their name. Leave houses to the ones who treat them like houses, not trophies. Rosa copied the last line on a card and taped it inside the pantry door. Above the fuse box. Spring rode in on the backs of soft, insistent rains. The roses stretched. On the first warm afternoon, Rosa set a long table in the garden, mismatched plates, linen that had lived in them, cupboard waiting for a celebration nobody had scheduled. She invited neighbors, the women from the soup kitchen, the mail carrier who always tucked packages behind the flower pot, Mr. Halley, Ethan, Gregory, Vanessa, and Chloe. She invited the gardener who had taught her to graft, and the teacher who had taught Eleanor to love frost. She left a chair empty with a shawl on it. Vanessa arrived early, carrying a pie and a humility that looked better on her than any dress. Gregory came late, apologized to everyone, but apologized again because the first apology sounded like a speech. Ethan came with soil still under his nails. Chloe came without headphones and asked Rosa how to pronounce geranium and laughed. When she got it wrong, they ate, they remembered. They argued about the best poems and agreed about the best soup. As dusk knit the sky into something indigo and kind, Rosa stood. I did not know what to do with this house, she said. So I asked it. It said, fill me, so I did. Heads nodded. Moths found the table candles and orbited the small suns. Ethan lifted his glass. To Grandma, he said. And to Rosa. To Rosa, voices echoed. Rosa raised her glass and then, after a beat, lowered it. To Eleanor, she said softly. She taught me where the fuse box was. People laughed, not entirely sure what it meant, but Rosa saw Mr. Halley smile. Vanessa did too, and wiped her eyes with the back of her hand. Later, after the guests had gone and the plates were stacked like good intentions on the counter, Vanessa lingered by the door. May I come by next week? She asked. Just to help with the roses. They bite, Rosa warned gently. I deserve a few thorns, Vanessa said, and managed to grin. You'll learn where to cut, Rosa said. When the house was quiet again, Rosa walked upstairs to Eleanor's room. She opened the window. Night breathed in. The portrait in the library was only a portrait. Here, in the small ordinary mess of Eleanor's life books piled, a slipper kicked under the bed, the shawl over the armchair, Rosa felt the presence. That mattered. I kept the promise, she whispered. I stayed until you were done. You kept one too. A wind-shaped silence answered, the kind that has no words but still speaks. Rosa turned off the light and closed the door. On the landing, she paused, listening to the house settle around her, wood and air and history arranging themselves into a quieter comfort. She thought of the first day she'd arrived, the weight of a suitcase, the weight of being tolerated. She thought of the many small humiliations, the unspectacular kindnesses, the days that repeated like footprints. Downstairs, she filled the kettle. When it sang, she poured herself a cup and carried it to the back steps. The garden smelled of wet earth and memory. She sipped and let the warmth bloom in her hands. A shadow moved by the gate. Ethan, slipping back to retrieve the jacket he'd forgotten. He saw her, waved, started to leave, then hesitated. Rosa? Yes? Do you think people can change? I think they can choose, she said. And if they choose wrong? She gestured to the garden. Then we prune. He nodded as if she'd handed him a map. Good night, good night. Rosa sat a while longer, until the tea cooled and the stars came out one at a time like careful promises. Somewhere a dog barked twice and then decided against a third time. The house behind her was not a trophy. It was a shelter with a memory. She thought of all the rooms that were now hers to open, all the windows she could raise so air and music and laughter could pass through unchallenged. They mocked the maid, she said to the night, testing the shape of the sentence the world would say about her. But they didn't know the house was listening. She finished her tea. She stood. Tomorrow there would be roses to cut and a scholarship form to fill and a leaky faucet to persuade. There would be apologies to hear and recipes to share, and a boy to teach how to hold a pruning shear without fear. There would be quiet. There would be rooms that needed only the oldest magic in the world, attention. Rosa closed the back door behind her and turned the lock, not out of fear, but habit, the good kind, the kind that keeps people safe. In the kitchen, she rinsed her cup, set it on the towel, and touched the leather notebook where it lay on the table, like a hand she could still hold. Some inherit money. Some inherit stories. Rosa had inherited both, and she knew which would. Last dot, she turned off the last light and walked up the stairs, the house holding her as she went.